What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush Duel video. Today, guys, we're doing a little bit of a different video when it comes to Rush Duels on this channel, and that is covering the new fusion monsters that we know is coming to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush Duel game. We've just gotten a batch of fusion monsters that are confirmed to be in the Rush Duel game, and I felt like since I have been heavy on seeing old mechanics in the game of Rush Duels, I feel like I at least have to do one video in regards to fusions being in Rush Duels and just going over the new fusions that are going to be in this game. So that is what I'm going to be doing in this video. We got two separate batches of fusion cards released. We got Uos Fusion monsters and then fusion monsters for the main seven, for Yuga, Luke, Roman, Gakuto, Roa, Asana, and Nail. That will also be covered in this video. So, without further ado, let's not waste any more time, and let's get right into it. Hey guys, before we actually get into the actual discussion, this is future me talking here, and I do want to quickly mention that I will not be talking about Yuga and Luke's new boss fusion monsters. We got an announcement as well that Yuga and Rook were going to get new boss fusions, as well as the other two ones that we'll be covering in this video. When I actually recorded this video, that announcement did not come out yet, and as I was editing this video, I noticed that those two new fusions were announced, and I just decided that I'm going to do those on a separate video instead of just trying to find a way to incorporate them in this video. So that's the reason why I will not be mentioning those two new boss monsters, is just because by the time I was recording this video, it was not announced yet. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up real quick before I actually showed you guys my thoughts on the new fusion cards. I just wanted to kind of mention why they are not mentioned in this video. So don't worry, I will still do a video on them, but it will not be in this video. So with that in mind, let's get back into this discussion for the new fusion cards. So the first fusion monster that we're going to be going over in this video is going to be one of Uos Fusion, since he was the one to introduce the fusion mechanic into the game of Rush Duels in the anime. I feel like we should start off with his fusion monster, or I should say fusion monsters, since he got 3 fusion monsters. So the first 3 fusion monsters are going to be Uos. So the first one is going to be Metallian Ericalstar, which is actually the monster he used to defeat Yuga with in episode 58. It's a level 9 light cyborg type fusion effect monster, which, by the way, is another thing with this set, is it's introducing a new type of monster, which is the cyborg type, which we'll be going over all of them as well, since all the cyborg type monsters in the game right now are actually Uos fusion monsters. So you're getting a 2-for-1 deal, which is actually a win-win in my books, or at least I believe. It has 2800 attack and 2500 defense, and its materials are imaginary actor and sword dancer. Its requirement is you can activate this by sending the top card of the deck to the graveyard. Multi-choice effect, which is also what you'll see with fusions, is that you can choose between 2 effects. Its first of its multi-choice effect is choose one face-down card your opponent controls and destroy it. So you can destroy a face-down defense position monster if your opponent is trying to stall, or you can just destroy a set card. That could be a threat if you go into the battle phase. So honestly, the effect is not really that bad. And the second one is choose one face-up monster, cyborg type you control. Until the end of the turn, that monster gains attack equal the total attack of all face-up monsters, warrior type, your opponent controls. Now, it's a cool battle trick to be able to get over high attack point monsters. The only problem that I have with it is that it's pretty restrictive. Not only do you have to have a cyborg type on the field, which is not that hard since this monster is a cyborg type monster, but also your opponent has to control warrior monsters. So if they're not using a warrior type deck, then essentially this effect is going to be useless because your opponent is not going to have anything for you to target. So it's a little bit situational, and I don't like effects like that. I like something that's they're fine being restricted, but I like a little bit more flexibility with cards. So, in my opinion, the card is fine if you're facing off against a warrior type deck, especially like what happened in the anime where you can get over something like a maximum in terms of attack points, as that's how Uo was able to defeat Yuga, was by being able to get over his maximum monster in sheer attack points. So from that sense it can work, but other than that, that's really the extent I can see you doing with the second effect of this card. Again, it's very restrictive. You have to rely on your opponent using warrior monsters and you controlling a cyber type, which is not that hard. So yeah, this is just an okay effect in my opinion. But let's go into the next Uos Fusion card, which is Metallian Vertistar, a level 9 light cyborg type fusion effect monster with 2800 attack and 2500 defense. Literally the same exact attack and defense point stat as a Star. And its materials are imaginary actor and serpenter. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that monster. Its requirement is none, so you can just activate it whenever, and its multi-choice effects are the first effect being choose one monster your opponent controls and change it to face up attack position or face down defense position. So I can see this being pretty decent if you're trying to get over a monster that might have a higher attack or defense point stat. So say for example you're going up against a Millennium Shield or something like that and it's in defense position, you can be able to switch that monster into attack position and you can be able to get over that. If you're facing a monster that has more than 2800 attack points, maybe like a 3000 attack point monster like a Blue Eyes, you can switch that monster into face down defense position and be able to run over that. So I guess in a way it's like a cool battle trick that you can do to get over monsters. So honestly, it's not that bad depending on the situation if you're doing it like that. And the other effect is choose face up monsters, dragon type your opponent controls up to the number of face up monsters, cyborg type you control, and destroy them. So this is similar to the other effect of Aurora Star, but the difference is that instead of gaining attack points for your cyborg type monsters, you're going to be destroying dragon type monsters up to the number of cyborg type monsters you control. Now, you're always guaranteed to destroy one monster since Vertistar is a cyborg type monster, so that's always a guarantee that you're going to be able to destroy one card. So in a sense, it's removal, but again, you have to rely on your opponent using not warrior this time, but dragon type monsters. So it's another situation of if your opponent is using a dragon type deck, then I don't think this effect is that bad at all. But any other deck, it's just completely useless. So from that perspective, I think it's maybe a little bit better than this or Aurora Star. Maybe that's a little bit debatable, but again, it's still a little bit too restrictive because you have to require yourself to have cyborg type monsters, which luckily enough you'll always have one since all of the fusions are cyborg type, or at least for Uos deck. But again, you have to rely on your opponent using a certain type, in this case having dragon type monsters. So it's alright. I mean, again, I wish it wasn't that restrictive, but that's just the way they want to go with this archetype. And maybe that's just what they're playing, is that every single fusion monster is going to be able to target a certain type. So maybe the next one will do the same thing. We'll have to wait and see. I normally don't look ahead with these. So maybe that would be the case. Or, I don't know, maybe they'll just do warrior and dragon. I really doubt that, but we'll have to wait and see. But let's get right into the final Uos Fusion monster. And that monster is Metallian Ericalstar, a level 9 light cyborg type fusion effect monster with 2800 attack and 2500 defense, same as the other ones, and the materials are imaginary actor and magic juggler. Its requirements is you can activate this by placing one card from your graveyard on the bottom of your deck. Its multi-choice effect, the first one being choose up to 3 cards from your opponent's graveyard and shuffle them into the deck. I mean, that effect is fine. I feel like really the only benefit, well, two benefits to doing something like this is that if your opponent has an effect that targets cards in the graveyard, then putting those back into the deck means that that card's effect is useless, but I mean, it's just okay. And then the other reason is that it can clog up your opponent's deck if they're trying to search for a maximum monster, so that could help in that way as well. But also you're giving 3 cards back, so unless your opponent wastes all their fusion monsters and they have like 3 fusions in the graveyard, and that way you can put those back into their deck and they basically have 3 dead cards. I just really don't see a benefit to that because you're essentially, again, giving them 3 cards that they could probably use later on in the duel if it wasn't like the example that I gave with the fusion cards. So it's an alright effect. And the second one is choose up to 2 face-up monsters, spellcaster type your opponent controls, and shuffle them into the owner's deck. Now, this one also does follow with the card targeting a certain type, this one being spellcaster. However, this one's a little bit more I guess less restricted because of the fact that you don't have to require a cyborg type on your field, but honestly that really doesn't matter because it targets a set amount. Targeting 2 face-up spellcaster type monsters your opponent controls and shuffles them into the owner's deck it's fine. I mean, they'll just be able to get it back later on in the duel, but if there is a fusion monster that is a spellcaster type, then that would actually be pretty bad for them because of the fact that now they have to waste their time fusion summoning the monster back. And I guess even for tribute summon monsters as well, because they're going to have to re-summon that monster. But that one's a little bit different because it's not that hard. With fusions, I feel like there's going to be a little bit more time investment in getting that fusion monster back on the field. So there is its own benefits to using this card, in my opinion, of course. So the 2 effects are alright. I will say, though, definitely out of the 3 monsters in terms of their second effect, this one is probably the better one in my opinion. Not only is it less restrictive, but also I feel like putting the cards back into the deck and shuffling them, I feel like that can have some benefits depending on what you're targeting. But with that being said, that is going to be it for Uos Fusion monsters, and now we're going to go into the main Core 7's Fusions monsters. And I guess we'll start off with Yugioh first. He's the protagonist, so why not? And also he had to deal with a fusion, so I feel like he should at least get his fusion read first. So his fusion is Stray Familia, a level 7 Earth Spellcaster type fusion effect monster with 200 attack and 2600 defense. Its materials are Stray Familiar and, well, another Stray Familiar. Its requirement is none, and its effect, so not all fusions are going to have multi-choice effects, which is pretty interesting, and I'll discuss that towards the end of the video when I kind of give like a final thoughts on these cards. I feel like that would be better to kind of discuss the whole situation with just 1 effect fusions at the end. So I'm going to mention that a little later on in the video. So its effect is choose 1 normal monster spellcaster type in your graveyard and special summon it to your field face up. If you special summon Stray Familiar with this effect, this card also gains 1400 attack until the end of the turn. Honestly, that effect is not that good at all. I mean, being able to special summon a spellcaster type normal monster from your graveyard is fine, so maybe you can get like a Dark Magician from your graveyard. That wouldn't be that bad, but this card, from just the way it's saying it in the card text, it's assuming that you would want to summon Stray Familiar from your graveyard. That way this thing can gain attack, which honestly, I don't like it gaining attack. I wish it kind of gained defense, and the reason I say that is because I feel like this would work a lot better with this fusion, since it has a big defense of 2600. If it, let's say it gained 1400 defense, that just kind of switch it, so instead of attack against defense, that's 4000 defense points for just a level 7 fusion monster of a cat. And honestly, that's good because then it would be able to kind of put up a impenetrable wall in a sense, to the point where either they're gonna have to try to use a maximum to get over it or use a removal card to be able to get rid of this monster. So in that sense, I think it would be a lot better than this gaining attack, because essentially this card is only going to be gaining 1600 attack, which honestly for a level 7 monster that requires 2 of the same monster in order to summon it, honestly for just 1600 attack points, it's honestly really not that worth it in my opinion. So with that being said, I just really don't think this card is really that good. And also, it targets specifically spellcaster type monsters as well. So not only do you have to target normal monsters, you also have to target spellcaster monsters with it as well. So yeah, it doesn't really seem like that good of effect to me in my opinion. But with that being said, we're going to go into Uos Fusion next, which is Dragon's Kick-Based Master, a level 7 Dark Dragon type fusion effect monster with 2300 attack and 200 defense. Its materials are Dragon Upsetter and Dragon Striker, and its requirement is you can activate this by shuffling one Dragon's Setupper or Dragon's Defender from your graveyard into the deck, and its effect is choose and destroy one spell or trap card your opponent controls. Now, effect-wise, I think the effect is good. Being able to get rid of a spell and trap card is always nice. However, again, it's a fusion monster with a restrictive cost. You need Dragon's Upsetter and Dragon Striker in order to summon it, but not only that, you need either Dragon's Setupper or Dragon's Defender in your graveyard to be able to use this effect, not the field in the graveyard. So that's a little bit restrictive in its own regards, and in fact, it's not even the same materials that you're using for the fusion summon. It's two completely separate monsters, so essentially, you require 3 monsters and the fusion card just to be able to get rid of an opponent's spell and trap card. So yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, being able to destroy a spell and trap card is nice, and I love to have a monster like that, or just a card that can do that. But to use 3 monsters and 1 spell card in order to activate that effect just does not seem that worth it to me. There is no way you're telling me that there is not a single card in the Rush Duel game that could do this, but is a lot less restrictive. So honestly, in my opinion, the effect is nice, but it's just way too restrictive in order to be able to use this card's effect. But that's going to be it for Uos Fusion. Now we're going to be going into Roman's Fusion, which is a Musi Howling Performer, a level 7 Fire Psychic type fusion effect monster with 2500 attack and 1700 defense. Its materials are a Musi Performer and Howling Bird. Its requirements is you can activate this by placing one a Musi Performer or Howling Bird from your graveyard on the bottom of your deck, and its effect, inflict 800 damage to your opponent. Now, I will say this, the requirement is a lot better than Uos Fusion, because at least with this one, you're always going to have the required monsters in your graveyard, since they're the same as the materials for the fusion summon, but its effect to just only deal 800 damage, I mean, it's fine, but again, you're going to have to use these 2 monsters in order to summon this fusion monster just to inflict 800 points of damage. Well, actually, no, I take that back, because essentially it would be 1600 in the span of 2 turns, because since you'll always guarantee have these 2 in your graveyard, you can deal 1600 damage. So actually, it's not as bad as I was originally thinking. I thought, okay, just dealing 800 points of damage, I mean, whatever, it's just a little nice burn damage strategy right there. But I guess if you can get enough of these copies of these cards in the graveyard, then I could see it maybe working, but more than likely, you're just going to use the 2 that are in your graveyard and just deal 1600 points of damage, which is a decent amount of life points. I don't think that's that bad. So honestly, this fusion it's not the worst. I don't think it's like a bad effect at all. I think it's a little bit of a weird effect for a fusion monster with specific materials, but honestly, for what it can do, it's honestly not that bad in my opinion. I think it's a pretty decent card. But with that being said, now we're going to be going over Gakuto's fusion, which is Kengo Shogun of the Crescent Moon, a level 8 Earth Warrior type fusion effect monster with 2600 attack and 2000 defense. Its materials are Misaki, the legendary samurai general, and Hero of the Yeast. Its requirement is you can activate this by sending the top card of your deck to the graveyard. Its effect is during this turn, this card cannot be destroyed by the effects of your opponent's trap cards. So specifically traps, no spells, just traps. I mean, if you're going up against a deck that does go heavy on traps, then I think that could work, but maybe that's all decks. Like, the weird thing is, I don't know how prevalent traps are. I know traps are prevalent in certain decks, like Amazements use quite a bit of traps, and Altergeist is essentially just a trap deck, and then you have actual trap decks like Paleozoics, but no one plays Paleozoics anymore, let's be honest here. But honestly, if this is where the situation differs, if the Rush Duel game is on a trap heavy focus like style where they'll use quite a bit of trap cards, then I honestly don't think this is that bad of a card because of the fact that it is a sort of protection, which I do like, and if traps are pretty prevalent and they're pretty dangerous, this can give some protection on it, and it has 2600 attack points, so it actually has a pretty reasonable attack point stat. So honestly, I don't see it being that bad, but if your opponent is not really using trap cards that much, then essentially this is just going to be a 2600 beater, which is still not that bad at all. I'm not discrediting that. That gets over Seven's Road Magician, and I think that also gets over Rush Dragon Gears, if I remember correctly, because that has 2500 attacks. So there you go. That basically beats 2 out of the main 4's like normal aces, so that's actually not that bad. So overall, I don't think this is that bad of a monster at all. I actually think it's actually probably the best fusion out of this entire video, which is really weird to say, but I really do believe that this is probably the best fusion that we've gone over so far. But we're now going to be going into the next fusion card, which is going to be Uos Fusion, and that is Fierce Full Owl. Full Owl? I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce this card. I think it's Full Owl. I believe that's how you're supposed to say it. It's a level 7 Light Fiend type fusion effect monster with 2700 attack and 1300 defense. Its materials is Full Owl of the Forenether and Full Owl of Wisdom. Its requirements is you can activate this during your main phase. This was fusion summoned, and its effect is choose one monster, fiend type, in your graveyard and special summon it to your side of the field face up. So it has a similar effect to Yugioh's Fusion, but the only difference I can see is that Yugioh's targets normal spellcasters, and this one targets any fiend monsters. So it can target effect fiends, it can target normal fiends, it can target future like fiend type fusion monsters. So honestly, I don't think it's that bad. It only sucks that it is a one-time use, so you can only use it once, but honestly, still, it's not really that bad of a card at all. I honestly think this one is as good as Gakuto's Ace, or Fusion, I should say, in my opinion. I really think this card can be useful because even after its effect is used, it still has 2700 attack, which actually can beat over Gakuto's Fusion. So honestly, I don't think this card is that bad at all. Being able to special summon a fiend type monster for honestly essentially free, because you can only just do this in the main phase, which more than likely that's when you would be activating it anyways. So honestly, to me, it just doesn't seem like there's really a drawback other than the fact it's only going to be basically used once in the entire duel, and that's it, unless you can get another copy of this card out. So in my opinion, it's honestly not that bad of a fusion at all. I think this is as good as the Gakuto fusion, maybe even better depending on how good the Fiend deck is, honestly, because that's really where this fusion can shine. Is if the Fiend monsters are really good, then being able to special summon that Fiend monster back from your graveyard is going to be very helpful, or at least in my opinion, of course. But now we're going to be going over Nail's fusion, which is Permalin Hykrotron, a level 8 light cybers type fusion effect monster with 2600 attack and 0 defense. Its materials are Femtron and Cypelotron. Its requirements is you can activate this if there are 3 or more cyber or effect monsters cybers type in your graveyard. Its effect, draw 2 cards, then choose 1 card from your hand and place it on the bottom of the deck. So if your hand got a little bit bricky, what you essentially do is use this card, draw 2 cards, so you're also netting a +1, which is pretty nice, or who knows, because I've talked to people about it before. Some people say drawing effects are good, and some people say drawing effects are not that great. I actually think they're not that bad because it still gives you a +1. That way you can further extend plays. That's what I've always believed, but I could be wrong on it. This effect might not be that good, but you draw 2 cards, you get your +1, and you get to return a card to the bottom of your deck. So if there's a card that's just going to rot away in your hand, just send that card to the bottom of the deck and just use the cards that you have in your hand right there. And that way also too, if you have a bricky hand and you have a card that would be dead in your hand and you can't like place it on the field or something like that, then you can just send it to the bottom of your deck and essentially can get the maximum out of your draws. So In my opinion, I think this card is honestly, it's not the greatest of effects. I don't think it's as good as the Roa and Gakuto fusions, but honestly, I don't think it's a bad effect. I think it's a pretty decent effect in my opinion. But now it is time to go over the final fusion monster from this batch of fusions, and it's a Sonus Fusion, Winged Celestial Dragon of Weal and Woe, a level 7 Earth Worm type fusion effect monster with 2300 attack and 1300 defense. Its materials are Coiled Dragon of Fertility and Coiled Dragon of Destruction. Its requirements is you can activate this by shuffling one monster worm type from your graveyard into the deck. Effect, send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. If you send a spell card to the graveyard with this effect, you can also choose up to 2 field spell cards in your graveyard and add them to your hand. I mean, I guess that's just a good way to kind of recycle field spells in your graveyard if you're on a field spell heavy focused deck, which I don't know if Rush Duels really does that. I do know a Sonus deck does play field spells. I do know about that, but I don't know if it's prevalent to do that. And milling the top 3 cards of your deck, I mean, I guess that could benefit if you have monsters with an effect that targets cards in the graveyard and shuffles them back into the deck, or could be good for if you have monsters in the graveyard, like say you sent like a high level monster into your graveyard and you have like a Monster Reborn or something in your hand. Play Monster Reborn, get that big beater onto the field, and then you can go from there. So honestly, it's not that bad of an effect. I just don't think really... It's weird on the other one with like being able to like get the 2 field spells. I don't know if that's really that useful or not, but sending the top 3 cards from your deck to your graveyard is fine. It can maybe lead to something later on, but for the effect itself and what it can do, I think it's a alright effect in my opinion. But with that being said, that is going to be it for the fusion monsters. But before I go into my final thoughts, I am going to be going over one spell card that essentially makes all of this possible, and that is the normal spell card Fusion. Its requirement is none, and its effect is fusion summoned by sending face-up monsters you control to the graveyard as materials. So yeah, essentially this is Rush Duel's polymerization, except it doesn't have the benefit of being able to fusion summon from the hand, which is fine since you can just be able to summon a whole bunch of monsters at once. It's not really like a downside or anything. But with that being said, that is going to be it for this video. Final thoughts on the monsters. I thought they were okay monsters, which is completely fine. This is literally the first batch of fusion monsters that we got, so the fact they're not the greatest of fusion monsters is completely fine. We'll probably get better fusions going down the line. Probably I would say the best fusions in my opinion were Gakuto's and Roa's fusion. I just felt like they just had a little bit more usefulness. You know, Gakuto's had protection and Roa's was able to get fiend type monsters onto the field pretty easily. So yeah, I would probably say those two were the best fusions overall. But the other ones were still alright. I just felt like Uos was a little bit too restrictive. And honestly, like Yuga and Rooks kind of were restrictive as well. Especially Rooks, which was surprising because that required 3 cards just to activate one effect. Like, I just thought that was ridiculous. That would probably be the worst one out of the whole entire bunch, which is kind of hilarious when you think about it, is that Luke gets the worst fusion, and he is the strongest duelist in the Sevens anime right now, so that's just kind of hilarious when you really think about it. But still, I think they're just pretty okay fusions for the first batch, in my opinion. I guess the last thing I'll talk about is fusions with one effect, as I originally thought fusions were going to have multi-choice effects, but it looks like not all fusions will have that, and that's completely fine. I mean, hey, we have fusions in the Master Rule format that literally have no effects. So the fact that you have fusions with just one effect, it's alright. I mean, to be fair, I feel like the multi-choice effects would probably be the ones that would probably interest you more, because the thing with one effect fusions is that you have to have an effect on it that is really worth summoning the fusion monster. And I guess that's also in the case of the fusions with the multi-choice effects, because you're going to be using 3 cards in your hand to be able to summon this fusion monster. So you're going to be going to -3 in a sense when you want to go for a fusion summon. So you need to have a monster with an effect that is honestly worth fusion summoning that monster. And I feel like with the multi-choice effect, it makes it a better chance of that happening. But with one effect, you don't have really that great of a chance. But again, it's not that big of a deal since, again, we've had fusions with literally no effects, and really the only use for them is just for beat sticks, and that's literally it. But other than that, that is going to be it for this Rush Duel video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what your guys' thoughts were on these fusion monsters. Did you think they were good? Did you think they were okay? Or did you not think they were that good at all? Let me know your guys' favorite fusion monster, whether it was by effect, whether it is by design, or whether it was by any other means. My favorite was honestly probably Gagato's Ace. I really did like the design of that monster quite a bit, but I would love to know your guys' thoughts on that as well. And before anyone asks in the comments, am I going to be doing more Rush Duel Fusion videos in the near future? Unless something drastic happens where I feel like I need to cover it, no. The thing is, it's just because I'm doing a Rush Duel video like this, which is something I have never done on this channel once, does not mean I'm going to go into more Rush Duel videos. It's just not my style. It's not my format. I just felt like I kind of had to cover these because this is an old mechanic coming into the game of Rush Duels. Why wouldn't I cover the first batch of fusion monsters? I feel like for someone that has been almost in a sense begging for one of the old mechanics, I feel like I had to do it. There was just no way I could not do a video on fusions, at least one video on it. Again, maybe I'll do another video if I feel like something drastic happened to where I needed to cover it in the video. So that's just to let you guys know. So don't expect more like Rush Duel videos in the near future. It's just not my format. But if something drastic happens, then I might be considering doing another Rush Duel video on it. But with that being said, that is going to be it. Thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, guys, take care and have yourselves a great rest of your day.